Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, yet another video, we'll be discussing about protection proxy, which is a type of a structural design pattern in Java design patterns, right? So basically, a protection proxy is kind of a proxy class which acts as a gatekeeper that checks the client's permission or API's permission before allowing access to the target object. So this can be understood by a simple example. Let's define a simple interface called drivable, and this would be a simple interface with a single method called void drive, right? Then we have a class called car, which basically implements the drivable interface, right? And we have a class called driver. For obvious reasons, we require a driver to drive any car. So we'll construct our car object, and car will obviously require a driver class, a driver object. So we'll prepare a private protected driver and prepare its construction. Simple. Obviously, for driving any car, we require a driver, so we are constructing and injecting the driver dependency to our car class. And the driver class will have a simple property called int age. Let's construct this driver object, public driver, taking age as an input, and we have our driver object ready. So essentially, a proxy would be that if we are performing any method called as drive for our car object, right, we can have a car proxy class which would do some protection, or in our case it would make some validations like check the age of the driver. If the driver's age is well above the restriction age, then you should be able to access this drive method, or else it will return some or print out some message saying that you are underage and not able to not going to drive, or not above the restricted drivable age. Correct? So essentially, the car proxy or car proxy class or protection proxy is a design pattern which help us to manage or enforce access control, right, by using the original API, right? So you might ask me, how are we going to access the original API? It's quite simple. We'll have a simple class called car proxy, right? It suggests it's going to be a proxy, and we'll use extends inheritance in terms of this, right? It will have an inheritance, so the inheritance will make accessible the current APIs of this class. So in order to access the drive method, right, so it will again override the drive method, public void drive, and within this drive method we'll implement or hook our protection or access control logic, which in this particular simplest example will be the driver that we have injected above. If its age or get age, make it public, age is greater than 18, correct? Then you will be able to access super dot drive the original API. Else it will print out you are not allowed to drive car yet, right? That's it. So essentially this is what the car proxy does. It implements or wraps around the original API to enforce access control and delegates the operation to the real object. The real object delegation happens at line number 41, right? And it is heavily used in a lot of frameworks such as Spring Securities. It is used a lot in aspect-oriented programming, Spring AOP, and it is used a lot of application security via the Spring Boot. So let's test out this example. Create a class called main method. Then let's define a driver who will be well above the age of driving age restricted at 21, and then we can define a car object which we'll call it as car example BMW, a new car with the D1 as the argument, and when we invoke the car dot to drive method, it will delegate this particular method over to line number 39, and then call our original API or the real API or the real object to access it. Let's say this drive original API has a sprint saying car being driven, right? Now let's test this out. We'll also add one more driver which is D2, and the driver would be of a minor age of 15. Suppose we try to create a new car. This is Ford car, new car with D2. Then if we try to drive this car, it should essentially protect or run the else part of the code, right? Let's test this code. Error, syntax error, right? See, okay, in both the cases, we driver.age is greater than 18, and only you should try to try the in this case BMW is still running. What could be the reason? If the driver.age is greater than 20, then we can try this is correct. But in case of Ford, which is of 15, it should go to next stage, right? So something is missing. We have driver age, then original API, car class, driver object, car constructor, interface, drivable interface. 15 is the age, and what is the value given? 18. So let's debug this in that case, right? If we're facing any issue, we'll definitely debug this. So let's debug. Debug configuration is not matching. Debug main. I think there's some issue. So here we are going to execute the drive method. So let's step into this method. So it's directly routing me to that car. It's I think it is because we have not created car proxy, obviously, right? We should use that car proxy. So yes, the protection proxy will basically lead our client or the client, whichever the client, should use the car proxy object in order to access this. So if we run now, let's stop this and run. See, For the one first one is valid, so it is car being driven, and for the next one it says you're underage, so you're not allowed to drive this car. So this is a very simple example. Essentially, it for the point for us to understand is proxy design pattern is a structural design pattern, and proxy objects, so-called car proxy, is used in order to control access of our main object, right? Main object, which is a car object, and this basically provides an additional layer of protection. And if we check our real world example, it is used in a lot of Spring Boot securities, like at the rate pre-authorized annotation. It is heavily used in aspect-oriented programming, which is we call it as Spring AOP. So these are some of the examples where it is used. Conclusively, protection proxy is a design pattern used to control access to an object based on the permission, right? And within Spring, protection proxies are utilized in several frameworks, notably Spring Security, Spring AOP, to enforce security policies. So I hope you understand the simple protection proxy design pattern. And thank you for watching this video. And hit like if you have understood the topic.